Hello, everybody. I'm keeping it nice and dark today for today's read aloud. I'm also keeping it nice and creepy and dingy a little bit, kind of trying to be a little dingy. All right, so what we're going to be reading today is a spooky story. And I'm trying to establish the mood on this spooky story. I've turned all but one light off. I wish I had some creepy music to play in the background because we are reading Mary Downing Hahn. She is one of the foremost middle grade horror story writers. And what I like about her is that she's able to tell scary stories without getting too dramatic or too gory, or the details that a lot of horror writers rely on, like the blood, the guts, the spooky, scary. She doesn't need to rely on that. She's just very good at gently telling a story that makes you feel nervous or makes you feel anxious. All right? And so we're going to have the lights dim down low like we do today. We're going to have this nice creepy voice in the air. All right? We are going to read Took by Mary Downing Hahn. The beginning. The old woman stands on the hilltop, just on the edge of the woods, well hidden from the farmhouse below. Two men and a woman are getting out of a car that has a sign for Jack Lingo Realty painted on the side. The old woman has seen plenty of realtors in her time. She doesn't know this one, but she remembers his pa, old Jack Lingo, and his pa, Edward, and the one afore him, back and back through the years, to put the first Lingo to ever settle in this valley and take up the selling and buying of houses. Though young Lingo doesn't know it, Auntie is helping him sell that house to the man and woman in the only way she knows. Muttering little and humming, moving her hands this way and that, weaving spells into the air, sending messages as she's always done. Messages that makes folks need things not worth needing. Dangerous things. Things they might regret. You might wonder why Auntie wants this man and woman to buy the house. Truth to tell, she doesn't give a hoot about them. They're ignorant fools, but they have something she wants, and she aims to get it. It's almost time for the change, and they've come on schedule, just as she known they would. New for old, she chants to herself, strong for weak, healthy for sickly, pretty for ugly. When the man and woman follow young Lingo into the old Esta's house, Auntie sways back and forth, grinning, rubbing her dry, bony hands together. Her skirt blows in the wind, and long strands of white hair rip around her face. With a little hop and a jig, she turns into something hidden in the trees behind her. Won't be long now, my boy. We'll get rid of the old pet and get us a new one to raise up. Though he stays out of her sight, her companion makes a noise like a hog when it's hungry, a squealing sort of snort that might be a laugh, or it might be something else altogether. Auntie gazes down at the run-down farmhouse and outbuildings, the overgrown fields, the woods creeping closer year by year. From the hill, she can see the missing shingles on the roof, the warped boards riddled with termites and dry rot, the cracks in the chimney. Almost 50 years passed since the Estes family left the place. Nobody has lived in there since. Local folk avoid the place. They scare their children with stories about the girl, the one before her, and the one before her, back and back to the very first girl. Fear keeps them out of the woods and away from the cabin on Brewster's Hill. Those children know all about Auntie and her companion. But newcomers always show up. City people who have never heard the stories. If the valley folk try to warn them, they scoff off and laugh and call the story superstitious nonsense. They come from places where light burns all night. They don't heed the dark and what hides in there. It all works to Auntie's advantage. Down below, a door opens, and Auntie watches young Lingo lead a man and woman inside. Even though they speak softly, Auntie hears every word. They aim to buy that tumble-down wreck of a house, fix it up, and live there with their children. A boy and a girl, they tell him. That's just what they want, a chance to get away from their old life and start anew in the country. They'll get some chickens, they say, a couple of goats, or maybe a cow or a sheep. They'll plant a garden, grow their own food. The man and woman get into their realtor's car, laughing, excited. Auntie spits into the dirt. Fools. They'll find out soon enough. She listens as the car engine until she can't hear it anymore, then snaps her fingers and does another jig. It's falling into place, just like I predicted, dear boy. But don't you say a word to her back at the cottage. She ain't know what until it happens. Her companion snorts and squeals, and the two of them disappear into the dark woods. To wait. Chapter 1. It was a long drive from Fairfield, Connecticut to Woodville, West Virginia. 2 days with an overnight stay in Maryland. My sister Erica and I were sick of the back seat, sick of each other, mad at our parents for making us leave our home, our school, and our friends. Had they asked us how we felt about moving? Of course not. They never had been the kind of parents who would ask you if you want to drink your milk from the red glass or the blue glass. They just hand you a glass and say that's it. Milk tastes the same whether it's put in the blue glass, the red, or the purple. Going to West Virginia was a big thing, something that we should have had to say in. But no, they left us with a neighbor, drove down there, found a house they liked, and bought it. Just like that. They were the grown-ups, the adults, the parents. They were in charge. They made the decisions. In all fairness, they had a reason for what they did. Dad worked for a big corporation. He earned a big salary. We had a big house, 2 big cars, and all sorts of other big stuff. Expensive stuff. Eric and I went to a private school. Mom didn't work. She was what was called a soccer mom, driving me and Erica and our friends to games and clubs and the country club pool. She and Dad played golf. They were planning to buy a sailboat. But then the recession came along, and the big corporations started laying people off, and Dad was one of them. He thought that he'd find another job fast, but he didn't. A year went by. One of our big cars was repossessed. Erica and I went to public school. We gave up the country club. And there was no more talk about the sailboat. Then the bank started sending letters. Credit card companies called. Dad and Mom were maxed out financially, and the mortgage company threatened foreclosure. So we had to sell the house. I can understand that, but why did we have to move to West Virginia? It was cheaper to live there, Dad said. Erica and I would love it. So much space, woods and fields and mountains. He took to singing Country Roads, an old John Denver song about West Virginia, putting lots of emphasis on almost heaven, West Virginia. He also informed us that there would be a license plate that said Wild Wonderful. So here we are on an interstate highway with nothing to see but mountains and woods. Wild, but not wonderful, in my opinion. It was like being in a foreign country. How could I ever get used to all the nature surrounding us? Beside me, Erica was talking to the doll Mom had given her. Not because it was a birthday or anything, but because she was so unhappy about leaving Fairfield, Connecticut. That's rewarding bad behavior, if you ask me. I was just as unhappy as my sister. But since I didn't cry myself to sleep or mope in my room and refuse to eat, all I got was a pair of binoculars and a Peterson's Guide to the Birds of North America. Dad thought I might like to identify the birds while we were out there when we went hiking. Well, maybe I would, but still, that doll was 10 times more expensive than my binoculars. It even came with a full trunk of clothes. There were even outfits my sister's size so she could dress the doll, and she and the doll could dress alike. It had its own bed too, and the hair was red just like Erica's and cut the exact same way. All the time we were in the van, Erica talked to the doll. She tried all its clothes on and told the doll how pretty it was. She hugged it and kissed it and even named it Little Erica. It was making me sick. But every time I complained, Erica got mad and we started quarreling, and Mom turned around and blamed it all on me. "Leave your sister alone, Daniel," she'd say. "She's perfectly happy playing with little Erica. Read a book or something." "You know I can't read in the car. Do you want me to barf all over that stupid doll?" At last, we turned off the interstate. The roads narrowed and ran up and down hills, crossed fields, past farms, and tunneled through woods. We glimpsed mountains and swift rivers. The towns were farther apart and smaller, some no more than a strip of houses and shops along the road. By the time my dad pulled off an unpaved road and headed down a narrow driveway, the woods around us were dark. In the van's headlights, trees looked like a strange set of lit by spotlights. They bounced over the ruts and bumps, tossing Erica and me away from each other. "Stay on your side, Daniel," Erica said, "and stop banging me with little Erica. We don't like it." "The doll doesn't care. She's not real." "She is so." "Be quiet, Daniel," Mom said. "It's not my fault," I said. "Instead of blaming me, tell Dad to slow down." And just then, we came out of the woods, and I got my first view of the house. It stood in the middle of a field of tall grass. Weeds, actually. Even in the dark, we could see that the place was a wreck. The porch sagged under the weight of the vines growing on the walls and across the roof. Tall, shaggy brushes blocked most of the windows on the first floor. Shutters hung crooked, some missing altogether. I was sure it hadn't been painted for a very long time. Erica was the first to speak. "It's scary." "What's so scary about it?" Dad asked. "It's dark." She hugged her doll tightly. "The woods are scary too, and there aren't any other houses." "Wait till morning, Erica," Mom said. "It's lovely in the daylight. You'll see." We have a few neighbors down the road, Dad said. How far down the road, I wondered. And what were they like? Dad and Mom got out of the van and headed toward the house. Erica ran to catch up and slipped her hand into Mom's. I followed them, breathing in the unfamiliar smell of the woods and listening to the night sounds. Wind rattled branches and hissed through the weeds in the field. A shutter banged against the side of the house. An owl called from the woods. At the same moment, something inside me made the hair on my neck rise. Sure that someone was watching us. I turned around and stared down the dark driveway. I saw no one, but I shivered, and not because I was cold. Arrival. The old woman stands on top of the hill, the edge of the woods, well hidden from the farmhouse below, just as she did before. But now it's dark, cold night, lit by the moon. All around her, brushes and branches rattle in a wind that carries an autumn's breath. But she isn't cold. She leans on her staff and peers toward the road. "They're coming," she calls to her companion. He snorts and continues snuffling about the dead leaves, looking for good things to eat. Headlights bounce down the driveway, and a big car stops by the house. Even in the dark, a person can see that it's a ramshackle wreck of a place, ready to topple over with the first strong wind that comes its way. The car door opens and the interior lights come on. She sees the girl, just the one she needs. The girl gets out, clutching a dolly. The old woman sniffs fear. The girl is scared of the dark and the old house. She doesn't want to live here. Well, she won't live here long, will she? The girl's name is blown by the wind across in the dark field and laid on the old woman's feet. Erica. Erica. She likes to draw the name out, especially the last syllable. Erica. Erica. The old woman whispers. The name glides lightly through the air, and a rustle of black silk thread winds itself into the girl's ear. She sees the girl tense and look around, move closer to her mother. "Yes," the old woman hisses. "You'll do. Erica. Erica. She does one of her little jiggles and calls out to her companion. Time to go, dear boy. We'll see her soon. Don't worry. She's the one. She's ours. As the family enters their new home, the old woman and her companion wrap themselves in darkness and make their way home. 2. While we waited on the porch, Dad fished out an old-fashioned key out of his pocket. With a lot of effort, he got it to turn into the lock. Moonlight followed us inside and cast shadows across the dusty floor. In front of us, stairs led to the second story. Mom flicked on a switch and the shadows fled. And to the right of the living room, maybe the parlor, empty for now except for a fireplace, 3 tall windows, old-fashioned wavy glass reflected us standing in the hallway, slightly distorted, like people in a funhouse. Where's our furniture? Erica asked. It's coming tomorrow, Mom told her. But where are we sleeping? She asked, sounding a little bit tearful. Don't you remember? She asked. We brought our camping stuff, sleeping bags, foam mats, pillows, blankets. Can I sleep with Mommy? Of course you can. Mom pulled her arm around Erica and hugged her. But I was pretty tired of Erica's clinging behavior. What's wrong with you? I whispered. You've never acted like this before. You never had to live in the woods before. She turned to Mom. Are we going to eat wild berries? Of course not, sweetie, Dad said. Whatever gave you that idea? That's what happens sometimes in the stories. Well, this isn't a story, Erica, Mom said. Dad got an ancient gas stove going, and Mom heated a pot of water. When it boiled, she dumped in noodles and heated a jar of marinara sauce. We ate our first meal in a house picnic style in front of the fire. Erica snuggled beside Mom and shared her food with little Erica. The food stuck onto the doll's face, and Erica tenderly wiped her clean with a napkin. Later, we all crawled into our sleeping bags and watched as what was left of the fire fall into ash. The lights were out, and the moon shone through the tall windows, and I heard Erica whispering to the doll. Sometime during the night, I woke up, and I had drunk too much soda after dinner, and now I needed to use the bathroom. I eased out of my sleeping bag and got to my feet. Dad snored, Mom slept like a dead woman, and Erica murmured as if she was dreaming. I tiptoed across the floor and eased the front door open. It was easier to pee outside than my way upstairs to the bathroom. The moonlight was bright and the stars were clustered thickly over my head, more than I had ever seen in Fairfield. I finished what I came out to do, stood on the porch, and gazed down the mass darkness of the woods bordering the fields. The night was cold, but I turned to go inside. I stopped by a sound in the darkness, a howl, which might have been the wind in the trees, but it was scarier, much scarier. I shivered and edged towards the door, but before I stepped inside, I looked back. Something moved on the edge of the woods. Its head gleamed in the moonlight. It's white as a bone. I heard the howl again, louder this time, and stumbled backward, slamming and bolting to the door. Daniel, my mom called sleepily. What are you doing up in the middle of the night? I went outside to pee. Something in the woods howled. I slid into my sleeping bag, shivering with cold and fear. Shh, you'll wake up Dad and Erica. Didn't you hear it? She shook her head. It's probably an owl or a fox. No, I saw it, I told her. It was like tall as a man, and its head shone in the moonlight. Mom smoothed my hair. Go back to sleep, Daniel. There's nothing out there. It's dark, and you're in a strange place. You close your eyes, and it was playing tricks on you. I moved a little closer to her. Maybe she was right. She must be right. Monsters didn't roam the woods anywhere but in fairy tales. I closed my eyes and practiced breathing slowly and deeply, but it was already almost daylight by the time I fell asleep. When I woke up, sunlight filled the living room, just as Mom had said. Whatever I had heard and seen in the dark was a natural explanation. Night noises, most likely. Animals going about their nocturnal businesses, embellished by my imagination. Moonlight and shadows playing tricks on you. The moving truck arrived before we had finished breakfast, and Mom put us all to work. We picked out our bedrooms first. Mine overlooked the woods, which were not quite as close to the house as I'd thought the night before. but close enough for me to see a deer pause at the edge of the trees and then vanish into the shadows. The lawns of Connecticut were overrun with deer, but this was a wild deer, therefore more noble than the ones that ate our shrubbery and our flowers and the vegetables Mom tried to grow. Erica's room was across the hall from mine and at the front of the house. Mom and Dad were next to her. The bedroom beside mine was reserved for Dad. His office, he called it. And at the end of the hall was a small room, probably a sewing room, Mom said, or a nursery. She claimed it for her weaving. The loom will fit just right underneath the windows, she said. And the moving men spent most of the day tramping up around the house, upstairs and down, putting furniture where Mom had told them to. When they finally drove away, Mom gave us our next task: unpack our clothes and belongings and put them away. I finished first and stopped at Erica's room to see how she was doing. Her clothes laid in a heap on her unmade bed. Boxes and toys and books sat in the middle of the floor and where the moving man had left them, still taped shut. Erica sat on a window seat, her back to me. She held little Erica. "We don't like it here," Erica whispered to the doll. "It's a bad, scary place, no matter what they say. You and I know, but nobody believes us." Little Erica had nothing to say that I could hear, but my sister bent close into the doll as if she were listening to her. "Yes," she murmured. "Yes." I hated to interrupt this weird conversation, but I stepped into the room and said, "Mom told you to put your stuff away, but you haven't even started." Erica whirled around. Her red hair swung like a flag, and so did the doll's. "I'm never going to put anything away until we go home." "This is home now." I picked up a box, labeled socks and underwear, and pried off the tape. "I'll help you." "Leave my things alone." Erica laid the doll down and snatched the box away. "Get out of my room, Daniel. We don't want you here." "What's going on?" Mom said in the doorway. "I'm just trying to help her unpack." "I don't want him to help," Erica said. "I'm going to leave everything just like this until we go home." "Honey, we are home." Mom tried to hug her, but she pulled away. "Home is Connecticut," Erica said. "Not here." Mom made a gesture towards the door. "Leave this to me, Daniel." As I left the room, Mom shut the door, and I lingered in the hall for a moment. Mom was softly talking, and Erica was crying. I found Dad in the basement and in front of a huge furnace, and I looked at something you'd find on the Nautilus, all dials and levers and doors and pipes. A submarine only Captain Nemo understood. Steampunk in every way. "Let me see," Dad mused. "It's September. Hopefully we have time to figure this out how this monster works before we actually need it." I pictured a long, cold winter with the four of us huddled around the fireplace to keep warm. "Or maybe I can call someone from the oil company," Dad went on, "and he can explain it to me." We went side by side and looked around in the basement. It was dark and dank and musty. The ceiling was so low that Dad could barely stand up straight. Pipes festooned with cobwebs and hung even lower. The only light that came was from a bare bulb hanging by a cord on a crossbeam. The floor was dirt, the walls were stone, the damp air smelled as if it had been trapped down here since the house was built. "Once I establish myself as a photographer," Dad said, "we'll fix this basement up. Replace the furnace with something newer that I can understand. Put some windows, maybe a sliding glass door. I could even build a dark room and get out my old film cameras." Well, Dad was picturing a dark room and sliding glass doors. I was imagining a murderer carrying his victims down to the deep, rickety steps, digging to the graves of a dirt floor. "I'm going outside," I told Dad. "I could use some fresh air." Leaving him poking around the junk piled in every corner, I found Mom at the kitchen table, busily sorting napkins and tablecloths. Erica was sitting near her, reading Bedtime for Francis to little Erica. Neither of them noticed me, so I slipped out the back door to do some exploring. The house looked even worse in daylight. Peeling paint exposed bare gray wood. A gutter drained of all the eaves, and down the spout laid all the weeds. Judging by the number of shingles I saw on the ground, the roof probably leaked, and the porch floorboards were warped, and the railing was loose. The steps were tilted to one side. Behind the house, I discovered a small tumble-down barn that almost hidden under a tangle of wild grapevines, honeysuckle, poison ivy, and brambles. All around it grew a jungle of pokeberry weeds that taller than I was. Poisonous berries hung from the wet red stalks in black clusters, like grapes. Sticking up from the weeds were two doorless refrigerators, an old plow, and an ancient Ford pickup truck, and several rusted air conditioners, and a mildewed sofa. The town dump, I thought, right in our backyard. What were Mom and Dad thinking when they bought this place? Had they lost their minds? We'd never get the house fixed up, let alone clear the junk out. I felt like packing my belongings and siding with Erica. Maybe between the two of us, we could persuade Mom and Dad to go back to Connecticut. All right. I'll do one more. Chapter 3. The next day, we went to Home Depot. We couldn't afford to paint the outside of the house yet. That would have to wait. But we could afford to make the inside look better. I chose blue for my room. Erica chose lavender for hers. Mom and Dad picked shades of beige for everything else, except for the kitchen, which was going to be yellow. A bright, cheerful color, Mom said. It took a week to paint the house. All of us, even Erica, helped scrape and sand and clean the walls. When we finally finished, the place looked more like a home. Our pictures on the wall, and furniture in rooms, and our books on the shelves. We ate dinner at our dining room table, using our plates and glasses and silverware. We ate breakfast and lunch at our kitchen table. Mom's collection of teapots appeared on a shelf in the kitchen. Dad helped her set up a loom in the little room upstairs. He organized his office and arranged his pipe collection of his barrister bookcase. He hung it with his diploma from the University of Massachusetts. In my room, I lined up my books on a shelf Dad made for me. I kept my Star Wars figures and my puzzle collection on their own shelves. Posters of Spider-Man and Captain America hung on one. A movie ad for The Hobbit hung between the windows on the opposite wall. I was beginning to feel at home. Erica finally unpacked her boxes and hung up her clothes. She folded underwear and socks and t-shirts and put them in bureau drawers. She arranged books and found places for her dolls and stuffed animals. When she was finished, her room looked exactly like it did in Fairfield. Her lavender checkered curtains fit in the new windows, and paint matched her old walls. And the only difference was the view. The woods and fields and mountains instead of green lawns and neighbors' houses. The next week, Mom enrolled Erica and me in school. It was our first trip to Woodsville itself. The shopping center on the outskirts of town had a Home Depot, a Walmart, and a Piggly Wiggly grocery store, as well as a nail salon, a liquor store, an insurance agent, a bank, Joe's Pizza, and a real estate office with faded photos of houses for sale taped in the windows. What more did we need? Dad asked. Whatever it was, we couldn't find it in Woodville, except for a used clothing store, a bar, a thrift shop, and buildings on Main Street that were boarded up. Even the graffiti was faded. Narrow streets ran up the hill from one side of Main Street and downhill on the other side. Dogs barked as we drove by. A gust of wind blew newspapers down the street. We didn't see a single person. The whole town could have been abandoned, as far as I could tell, except for the dogs, of course. Next time we'll take the scenic route, Mom said, if there is one. She turned off Main Street, and drove up the hill, through the neighborhood of the old houses that were slightly nicer than the ones we'd seen so far. The Woodville School was at the top of the hill, kindergarten through 8th grade, which meant that Erica's 2nd grade classroom and my 7th grade classroom would be in the same building. The school was made of dark gray stone and had tall, narrow windows and a steep flight of steps that led to the main entrance, a big black door. It might be is named like the Bastille School for bad boys and girls. Erica clung to my mom's hand. I don't want to go here. It's ugly. Don't be silly. Shaking her free hand, Mom pulled open the door. It will be fine, she added. Just give it time. I knew by the uncertainty in her voice that she didn't believe her own words. But what could she do? It was the only school in town. Mom led us to an office filled with old-fashioned dark furniture. A thin woman looked up from a typewriter, and she did a funny thing with her mouth, which I think was meant to be a smile. Her hair was pulled back tightly from her face, and she wore a plain black dress with long sleeves. She scared Erica and made me nervous. Even Mom looked uncomfortable. According to the sign on her desk, she was Miss Danvers, school secretary. "You must be Mrs. Anderson," she said to Mom. "You and Erica and Daniel, I'm not mistaken. Welcome to Woodville Elementary." While Erica and I sat side by side, silent as mutes, Mom filled out the forms. Miss Danvers returned to her typing. I watched fascinated as the sight of a real live person using an antique instead of a computer. "The official transcript should arrive any day," Mom said as she handed Miss Danvers the completed paperwork. A bald man with a gray mustache stuck his head out the inner door. "I'm Mr. Sykes, the principal. I hope you two will enjoy our school. A bit smaller than you're used to, I'm sure. Not as up to date, maybe," but the phone in his office rang, and he excused himself to answer it. I knew sarcasm when I heard it. Miss Danvers led the three of us down the hall. The walls were grayish green and bare. No bright paintings, no starred reports, no posters. The closed doors to the classrooms were unadorned too. It was very different from the schools I'd gone to in Connecticut. Miss Danvers stopped at the door labeled 7th grade. "Wait here," she told Mom and Erica. I opened the door. She ushered me into the room, and the teacher was a large woman with a stern face. She looked at me as if I were an invasive species. The kids in the room stared at me. They sat in old-fashioned one-piece desks arranged with a straightforward rows and in front of the room. No artwork, no projects, just the flag and a faded portrait of George Washington. The blackboard was made of slate, but sticks of chalk and erasers lay on the ledge beneath it. It looked like a classroom from an old black and white movie. I glanced over my shoulder. Mom was staring into the room with disbelief. "Daniel, this is Miss Mincham, your teacher," Miss Danvers said. Turning to the class, and she added, "Boys and girls, Daniel's from Connecticut. He's a little state up near New York City." Their eyes flickered to me. Taking over my khaki pants, my turtleneck sweater, parka, standard clothing for either Pine Ridge or Carson Middle School, but not here. The uniform for both boys and girls seemed to be jeans and a t-shirt, old and faded and either too big or too small. A boy in the back of the room snickered. He must have been 15 or 16 years old, judging from the size of him. Two girls whispered, and the other girl giggled. Miss Mincham rose to her feet in awe-inspiring sight. Almost 6 feet tall, weighing about 200 pounds, she frowned at the boy in the back row and the two girls. And then she told me to take a seat in the back row, the empty one, next to the giant boy. The class was studying history. Miss Mincham called out events from the Revolutionary War and asked kids to supply the dates when they happened. I'd never been good at remembering stuff like that, so I didn't do any better than the rest of them. When she shifted the subject to math, she sent us to the blackboard for drills and long division. English consisted of reciting rules of grammar, and geography was naming capitals of foreign countries. In the cafeteria, a kid knocked my lunch tray out of my hand and pretended it was an accident. In gym class, a bunch of boys cornered me in the locker room and shoved me around, sneering at my clothes and my snobby accent. Ignoring their behavior, the gym teacher blew his whistle and yelled, "Okay, that's enough. Out on the floor. Let's play some basketball." I was bumped into, tripped, hit my head on with the wall, and all accidentally, of course. By the end of the day, I hated Woodville School. I found Erica, and we boarded the bus that would take us home. The driver was a woman named Mrs. Plummer, the first nice person I had met all day. She told us our stop was the last one. "It's a long ride," she said. As we rumbled through the narrow roads, uphill and downhill, letting kids out of farms and trailer parks along the way, the boy behind me kicked the back of my seat, and his friend said things like, "I'm from Connecticut, and I'm better than you," and what I thought was a good imitation of the accent I never knew I had. Finally, there was one kid on the bus, Erica and me. Despite the lurching ride, he staggered up the aisle and sat down in front of us, leaning over the back of the seat. He stared at us, maybe 10 years old, a scrawny boy with dingy blonde hair and sad brown eyes. He looked as if soap was not used at his house, either on him or his clothes. "My stop is the last one," he said. "Did you forget to get off?" "No," I said. "We're the last stop." He shook his head No stop after mine. We just moved here, I told him. We live on a farm just over the bridge. His eyes widened. You live on the Estes family farm? I shrugged. Maybe. I don't know who lived there before, who used to live in our house. I glanced at Erica, who was staring at the boy. Is something wrong with where we live? She asked. It's where the girl disappeared, he said. What girl? I nudged her. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to scare us. He looked at me. I'm not lying. If that's what you think, just ask anybody about Celine Estes. They'll tell you. He shoved his face close to Erica's, and something got her and drug her away, and nobody else has seen her again. Erica drew back, her eyes fearful. Nothing dragged her away, I told him. She got lost and fell off a cliff or something. Ha! Said the boy. That's what you think. There's things out in these woods that people from Connecticut can't ever get heard of. With grinding of gears, the bus stopped and the boy got off. I looked out the window and saw him standing on the road, making a face at me. And then we jolted and bumped and swayed around a curve, up a hill, leaving him and his stories behind. The bus made its way to the final stop at our driveway. As we got off, the driver, Miss Plummer, leaned out the door and said, Don't believe anything Brody Masons tell you. He's a born liar, that boy. As the bus drove away, Erica turned to me. Do you really think a girl disappeared from our house? Of course not, I said. You heard what the bus driver said. Brody or whatever his name is a liar. He's trying to scare you. He did scare me. She fumbled to adjust the shoulder strap on her backpack. He wasn't lying, Daniel. I could tell. I straightened her strap for her. Listen, Erica, that boy's definitely lying. And do you know why? Kids out here don't like us. We're outsiders. That's why they're so mean. Erica turned to me, her eyes bright with tears. My teacher, Mrs. Klein, she's mean too. She's even meaner than Miss Davis back at the public school in Fairfield. She kept me in at recess and made me write 100 times, I will not daydream in class. The girl who sits behind me whispered that I'm ugly, and at lunchtime, the girls laughed at me and said I talk funny and wear weird clothes. They wouldn't let me sit at the table with them either. It was exactly the same in my class, I told her. I got beaten up in gym. My teacher called me stupid because I didn't know what the capital of Rhodesia or what exact date George Washington crossed the Delaware, let alone any rules of grammar, which no one ever taught me. Maybe Mom will teach us at home. I shook my head. No, she'll just tell us to be patient, and the kids who will start liking us, and, all of a sudden they'll realize that, well, nice we are, even though we do come from Connecticut. You don't believe that, do you? No, I said. In fact, I don't even think Mom believes it. Erica frowned. Do you hear noises at night? I looked at her, surprised by the sudden change of subject. Do you? Sometimes I hear a sort of whispering, almost like somebody's calling me. It sounds like this. Erica, Erica. She said it in a sing-songy voice, a weird, drowned-out version of her name. It's just the wind, I told her. Hear it blowing in the tops of trees. It sounds like it's whispering from up there. Erica shook her head. No, it's not like the trees or the wind. It's my name. And I hear it whisper in other things. And I can almost make it out the words, but not quite. She broke away from me and ran to meet Mom on the porch, her red hair flying in the breeze, her backpack bouncing. I followed her slowly, thinking about what she had said. I'm not sure that Erica had imagined that this whispering voice, but when I looked in the woods behind me, I felt my chest tighten with anxiety. In the late afternoon light, the shadows and the trees stretched across the fields. The woods were already dark, and the mountainsides were in shadow. Mom waved to me up from the porch, and I broke into a run, suddenly eager to be inside, safe from whatever was hiding in those woods, things that didn't exist in Connecticut. All right, so that's the beginning of Took. All right, we can already see a lot of things building up. It's definitely one of those books that makes you want to keep reading. I know I want to find out if the witch actually does, or old Auntie is what she's called. I want to find out if she does get Erica and if Daniel's able to get her back. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Hopefully it wasn't too scary for you. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing yet, but stay tuned, okay? All right, it was great seeing you. Bye.